If you're new to the hobby of astrophotography and maybe you're looking to buy your first guide camera, I'll bet you've probably at some point been looking at this thing here. This is the ZWO ASI120mm Mini. And if you're like me when I started out, you've probably also been looking at the 220mm Mini. And you're thinking, why is this so more expensive? For just a little bit more resolution, is that really worth it? In this video, we're gonna go through the difference between those two cameras. We're gonna look at them first from a theoretical perspective. We're gonna look at the specs, we're gonna compare them. And then I'm also gonna be running them head to head under the stars so we can see what that means for your guiding performance. At first glance, when you're looking at these two cameras side by side, you might think, okay, the 220mm has more resolution. Surely that's going to be good. And yes, it is, but mostly in astrophotography, we don't really care much for the resolution. We much more care about the sensor size and the pixel size. You could argue that those two together is going to give you the resolution, but the resolution itself doesn't tell you if the pixels are tiny, if the pixels are huge. And that matters when it comes to guide cameras, because bigger sensors means bigger pixels means there's a bigger area that the light can be collected on. More light, more signal, better signal to noise, cleaner, less noisy image. Now, but the biggest difference between these two cameras is what's called the Quantal Efficiency. You might think, oh my God, that sounds complicated. It's not as complicated as it sounds. Look at this graph right here. This is what's called the Quantal Efficiency graphs for these two cameras. And what this shows you is on the x-axis, it shows you the wavelength. So there's just different wavelengths of light, different colors of light. And on the y-axis, you see how good the camera is at converting that specific wavelength of light into signal. So if we just, for example, let's take here at 600 nanometers, we can see that the 120mm converts about 78% of the light at 600 nanometers into signal. That means there's 22% of the light that just disappears. It never gets registered by the camera. Comparing that to the 220, more expensive camera, it's all the way up at 86%. So now we only have 14% of the light that disappears. And we can see that across the entire spectrum, at least where ZWO has provided data for. We can see that in general, the 220 is just better at converting light into signal. And that, of course, is going to be super important. Adding to that it also has bigger pixels, slightly, a little bit, but still bigger, means that you're just going to get a better signal with that camera than you are with the other one. And that's what you're paying for. You're paying for that quantal efficiency. Paying for a more sensitive sensor that's better at capturing light, and that's gonna maybe give you better guiding performance. Not always, but sometimes. I actually got both cameras and I took these out for a field test because I wanted to see what these two cameras could do side by side. They're going to be running on the same rig, same camera, same everything, same night. We're guiding on the approximately the same area of the night sky. Really trying to keep this as apples to apples with this test. Looking first at the result from the cheaper 120mm, we can see here it actually guides quite well. We are below 0.4 arc minutes of total RMS. Now, if you don't know what your total RMS means, RMS is just short for root mean square, so it's just a way to do like a statistical mean, kind of. And it's just a measurement we use to quantify how well a system is guiding. Now, if you should do it correctly, you would take pictures and you would measure the actual star sizes and stuff like that. But this just gives you an indication for how big corrections the guide camera is seeing as it is trying to guide. So it's how much the guide camera is trying, or the mount has to compensate for inaccuracies as it's trying to guide. So bigger number means worse guiding, smaller number is better. Now, as you can see in the test here, it's running very well. It's running below 0.4, which is excellent. And that's with a cheap camera. However, as you can also see, sometimes, for no apparent reason, it might go up to 0.5, up to 0.6, and this is completely normal. I see this all the time, and usually on a normal night, it was exceptionally good this evening, but on a normal night, I know that this camera will probably run at around 0.5 However, if we now look at the same test running with the 220mm, we can see here once again it sits nice and low down below 0.4. Sometimes it did get above 0.4 and got up to like 0.45, something like that. But in general, it just kept it lower. It didn't have those peaks all the way up to 0.6, 0.7 that I saw with the other camera. So now is probably a good time to talk about whether you should fork over the extra money for the more expensive 220mm or if you're gonna be fine with just the 120. I can't give you a straight answer because it's one of those situations where it depends on your telescope, it depends on your mount, it depends on a ton of different things. One advice I can give you though is you're never gonna see worse performance, unlikely at least to see worse performance with the 220mm compared to the 120mm. But there are specific situations where I think the 220 more expensive is more beneficial. And that is especially if you're guiding at if your main telescope has an extremely long focal length. If you have something like a planetary camera or a telescope with a very, very long focal length, we're talking 1,000, 200, 1,200, 2,000, and you then have a guide scope to match, those situations, yes, I definitely believe that the 220 is going to be beneficial for you because of those long ranges. It can be difficult, and people that use these long range telescopes or long focal length telescope will know that it can be difficult sometimes to actually find enough stars because you have such a narrow field of view to get good guiding. And this is where that extra sensitivity really, really pays off if you have these really long focal length telescope. For more wide field setups like this, I usually wouldn't necessarily expect to see a huge benefit if you have smaller telescopes with wide fields of view. I don't expect you're gonna see a huge difference. I do in my test because of the mount I'm using. The mount I'm using specifically really likes fast guide pulses, but it's down to the way the mount is built, and in that case, because it likes the fast guide pulses, I have to use extremely long exposure times on my guide camera. You will see in the test that I was running at half a second, which is quite uncommon. Often the recommended exposure times is 1 to 2 seconds. But because my specific mount really likes fast guide pulses, that also means I need to lower my exposure time. Lower exposure times mean less time to collect light. That means the higher sensitivity again becomes beneficial. So whether you should get it or not depends on your equipment. But at least now you know why one camera might be more expensive than the other, and you know how to compare them, and you know what you're paying for. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, I would love it if you would consider subscribing, maybe dropping a like as well. And you can also check out my merch store at deepspacemerch.com, where you can get t-shirts and mugs, and also my book, The Cosmic Field Guide, which might also come in handy if you're starting out with astrophotography. Today I'm going to walk you through the entire process of focusing a guide scope, how to get the camera situated correctly, how to get it in focus.